Hey there, it's Jim and Debbie, your best friends, and we're back with episode 84 of the Midday Minute.
We're really racking up those episodes, and it's been a while.
Yeah, it sure has. Now you're fresh back from the service trip to Phoenix.
I
Uh,
am.
Site visits also while you were there, and that's
Mhm.
what we're talking about today. We're gonna have Libby, our Elks Scholar Fellow, on the show, and we're gonna recap the Elks Scholar Service Trip from earlier this month.
Yeah, there is a lot to cover. So maybe
So why don't
without further ado,
let's bring Libby out here.
come
Here
on,
she
Libby
comes,
Willkomm.
about to appear by the magic of it's just magic. Who can try to
It is
understand?
magic.
Here she comes right now. It's Libby. Hey, Libby, welcome
He
to the
is.
show. First time, right?
Hi,
It
Libby.
is. Thank you so much for having me.
We always like to start with some hazing. Just kidding. Uh, Libby, why don't we start by getting to know you a little bit? You're an Elk Scholar. Um, what scholarship did you get? Where did you go with that scholarship? What did you study?
Yeah, absolutely. My Elk Scholar story starts out when I was just a high school senior in West Bend, Wisconsin, and I applied for the Most Valuable Student Scholarship. Shout out to Sheboygan, Wisconsin, Lodge number 299 for being my sponsoring lodge. So I was a 2019 MVS scholar. At the end of my senior year, they had a really great ceremony at the lodge, and I was like, "Oh, this is pretty cool." Went off to college at Cornell University studying industrial and labor relations in upstate New York. And the kind of first big interaction that I had with Elk Scholar programming was attending the San Diego service trip, which was January 2020. And it was an incredible experience. I feel like I learned so much more about the Elks. I made really good friends that I still keep in touch with. And I really liked the service orientation. I feel like it really complemented my interests in social impact and nonprofit management. So I was felt really connected to it and was like, I'm going to keep doing these. Unfortunately, COVID put a bit of a stop to that, but I was super excited to stay involved in a lot of the virtual programming that we had. I also received one of our scholar grants to do a collaboration with a club that I had at Cornell. And then I went on my second service trip to Seattle in the spring of 2022. An equally amazing opportunity. And that was at the end of my junior year. And that's what started to get me thinking, this is a pretty cool opportunity. And I think I want to continue to stay involved.
You were a breakout star of the San Diego 2020 San Diego service trip film. Do you remember, Jim? We were like,
Yeah, I was just going to ask that.
Libby is
Yeah, yeah,
this scholar is fantastic. And little did we know, right, that you'd be our future coworker.
Here
yeah.
we are 4 years later. The San Diego trip was a little over 4 years ago, which is crazy.
Right?
Right. Time flies. Hey, I wanted to ask, though, you mentioned Cornell, and our viewers can't hear Cornell without wondering, were you a member of an a cappella group?
I was not, but I'm so glad that you asked.
Okay.
Great question,
All
for
right.
sure.
So you attended a scholarship service trip and a virtual program, and you decided you were interested in the role when it became available. You got the role. You joined us. When did you start?
I started June of 2023, so I've been here for just about 7 months. And I have to say, time flies when you're having fun because it's crazy that it's already been this long. I had a really great start to my role, kicking it off after just a few weeks at convention,
Yep.
which was a really awesome opportunity to continue to learn and connect with so many amazing members. And also, we had our scholar advisory board there, which was kind of one of my first experiences advising a group of students.
And there was service, so you were able to kind of hit the ground
Yes,
running,
exactly.
in a
Yep.
smaller group.
Yes. So it was like the perfect start to the role. And I was like, this is really fun. Um, and really aligned with my personal interests in higher education. And so then I feel like the fall went by so quickly, doing some programming with students, but especially preparing for our 2024 scholar service trips. And so I led my first one at the beginning of this month to Phoenix.
So we had, you weren't alone as far as staff on the trip. Debbie, you were there for at least part of it, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's an important aspect. Obviously, the fellow, Libby, as our fellow, does all of the planning, and our youth programs manager, McKenna Cannon, and I help support that planning. Libby is obviously the lead, and it's an important aspect to my position overseeing the scholarship programs, to be there, not only because there's scholars involved, but we also try to look at what lodges are doing with our lodge grants. So there's that dynamic. So Libby did not get sent out alone with, up to 20 scholars. McKenna, myself, Megan Morris, and Sam Kaiula also joined us on site as support staff.
Right. There are a couple of SIPsters, and they also conducted some site visits while they were there, and we'll probably dig into that in a future episode.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Libby, let's hear a little more.
Yeah. So I thought we'd talk first about the service you guys did. 3 different places, right? Why don't we hit them in order, starting with the Welcome to America project? What's that all about? What was the service like? What were you guys doing?
Absolutely. So the first day we were at the Welcome to America project, which is an organization that supports refugees who are resettling in the U.S. And it actually has a really cool story. When I visited them in September in preparation for the trip, they shared that the founder had his brother was killed in 9/11. And so they felt, really connected to this. And when they realized, following that, there were some Afghani refugees that were moving to the area that were not being welcomed and treated very poorly. And he was like, this isn't how we work in this neighborhood. And we really want to support and be there and welcome those who come to Phoenix and the Tempe area. So they started this organization, the Welcome to America Project, that has grown significantly since. And they just help to, make new families feel welcomed in the area, help support them, make them comfortable. So they collect donations of clothing, furniture, home furnishings, cleaning supplies, etc. And then every Saturday they do these Saturday welcomes where they go visit the family and give them everything that they need to be comfortable and established where they are. It was a really great place to volunteer because I think a lot of us don't really know much about the refugee process. So we got to learn a lot about that, the process. Many of these people have been displaced for decades or in refugee camps for decades before they are a part of this opportunity to gain citizenship in the U.S. So it was a really educational opportunity, and the scholars loved the service. One thing that they're always great at is like organizational tasks. So for example, they have a whole warehouse at the Welcome to America Project full of furniture, and it was so full of furniture, they couldn't tell where the chairs were versus the tables and how to find everything. So they were like, we just need this organized so that when someone comes, it can be like, these are our options. So the scholars emptied out, in only an hour, emptied out the whole warehouse of furniture and then put it all back in, organized, stacked nicely with aisles so that you could see all the options. We had some scholars organize all of the bedding that they received and linens by size, go through them. A big thing that we valued in that was donations that are dignified and something that you'd want in your home. And then scholars also went through clothing donations for a big portion of that time and just had a really great experience learning more about a new issue.
I would say one of the hardest parts of the job is when it comes to the service is figuring out how much time it's going to take, because our scholars, what I've noticed is they embody the phrase work smarter, not harder. And we always seem to underestimate their efficiency when it comes
to finish things so quickly.
And they're always blown away, right? Like
it's So like the big tasks they had were the reorganizing tasks. We had 3 hours at the organization and they finished them in an hour and a half. But lucky for them, or lucky for us, they had some other things, some more donations to go through. So they were like, we'll keep putting you to work. But yes, that is so true. Probably one of the hardest parts of my job, because they're always finishing things up so quickly. They come up with systems and organize, and it's especially incredible considering they only meet like a day before they start service, and by the time they're at a service site, they're like a well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Impressive.
And
So
Libby, that was sorry, Jim, that was an organization that was actually pretty close to where we were staying, right?
Yes.
How did the group get there?
Yeah, so we actually just walked there. It was a 20-minute walk, beautiful weather in Phoenix for a walk there, which was, very convenient for the service trip. I had visited them when I was on a site visit in September, and I loved how close they were, and they are really great with hosting groups. That's another big thing we have to consider because we have such a large group. So I was like, I know I have to take my scholars here, and they raved about it all week.
And it's part of our process thinking through like that the scholars understand what the like lived reality is, lived experience of actual individuals who are seeking services and supports from these organizations. So like walking is something that people have to do. Taking public transportation is something people have to do. So that's also part of the equation that we're looking at when we're selecting these sites.
well, I want a quick question about the organization before we move to the second day, and that's do their consumers tend to come from a specific region or conflict in the world, or all refugees from all over, or like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they welcome refugees from all over the world, but they did mention that there are a couple countries that they receive refugees from more often. So Afghanistan, Democratic Republic of Congo, Myanmar, Burma, and they have a lot of volunteers that speak those languages and are connected to those communities. And also the majority of their staff members are refugees themselves that help make these connections with the families and help communicate with them so that they can really get everything they need.
Awesome.
It's really interesting.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's go to day 2, where you are working with Mana House.
Yes. So Mana House is another incredible organization that I also visited in September and was like, I have to bring my students back here. It was so incredible. And so Mana House is a transitional housing facility for veterans experiencing homelessness or housing insecurity. It's an all-men's facility and it's peer-led. So many of the staff members are veterans themselves.
And Mana stands for?
Marine, Air Force, Navy, Army, House. Yeah.
House stands for house.
Exactly. And they're really awesome because they provide a lot of wraparound services to veterans. So not only housing, but casework, career support, things like that to really help them get back on their feet and have a safe transition to permanent and affordable housing. And so when I visited them, I was like, yo, what do you guys need? What's the highest need? And they were like, welcome home kits. They're like, we never have enough of them because they're getting better and better at transitioning veterans into permanent housing, which is awesome. But their donations can't really keep up with that often. And so veterans are moving out and maybe not having enough to furnish a home. And I was like, no way. We can do that. So it was truly the perfect partnership. And I was like, great, we can make something happen here. And that's where some of our partnerships with local Elks came in and were so incredible. This was really like a pinnacle service opportunity on the trip. So I reached out to the Mesa-Buckhorn Elks Lodge. And I was like, Mana House really needs welcome home kits. Is there anything that you can do? And Debbie was like, Debbie Melton from the Mesa-Buckhorn Lodge, my apologies, said, like, we got you. We'll bring items for 10 welcome home kits. We'll be there, which was so incredible to see how they just stepped up and were like, absolutely, of course we will. And when we arrived to Mana House on that day, jaw dropped as Debbie Melton arrived in a U-Haul full of stuff for welcome home kits. It was incredible. Anything you could possibly imagine you might need: dishes, bedding, pillows, a garbage can, cleaning supplies, a can opener were there. And so the scholars assembled 10 welcome home kits, and then we donated those to Mana House. That was really great because it started with Mana House kind of giving a presentation on what they do, the challenges and barriers that veterans face, and housing insecurity in general. And then Debbie Melton gave a presentation on the welcome home kits that she does and everything that's involved in them. And then the scholars got to work. And it was incredible. And along with that, they also assembled some hygiene kits, some starter kits for veterans who are first arriving, and did some other like cleaning tasks around the housing site.
And Debbie was there volunteering with a couple other members all day. So that was also nice, serving side by side with Elks.
Yeah, the welcome home kits are filled with things that we all take for granted, but truly are items that turn houses into homes. That's what we always say. When a veteran exits homelessness, they now have four walls and a roof over their heads, but that's it in many cases. Enter the welcome home kit. So that's awesome and a great synergy, and well done.
It really was. It was a really wonderful organization, and synergy is a great word for it, because there were not only were obviously Libby and the rest of the scholars there, but the relationship that Libby helped form through the foundation with both the Mesa-Buckhorn Elks and the Mana House. Also probably a good time to jump in and say that as we're planning, we're always looking at what the local lodges are doing in and around the site. And Libby, why don't you talk a little bit about our collaboration, cross-program collaboration with the Community Investments Program staff, as well as some of the Elks leadership who from Arizona who came in and helped support, because there's a nice tie in there too.
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, our community investments program is really amazing partner for me as I'm planning things, because they help make that connection with me to the lodges, and that's what kind of created this incredible collaboration and hopefully a relationship that will exist into the future. And along with that, I have to give a huge shout out to some incredible Elks members who were with us the whole week. Jerry and Linda Grimes joined us in Phoenix for the whole week they really wanted to get to know, like be there to support us. They were incredible hosts, and also to get to know some of the organizations that we were working with. So they came with us to all of the service sites. And that was a really incredible experience to see them involved, see the scholars learning, and also seeing them be like, oh, these are great organizations that we hope we can continue to stay connected to in the future.
Jerry is a special representative for the Arizona State Association, and is from the Kingman, Arizona Lodge, which is, I think, like 4 hours away from Phoenix. Yeah. So it's a first. We've been doing our service trips since the summer of 2015, and that's the first time we've had, an association leader come and like stay, not only, for the whole time that the scholars were there, but also to really connect that what we're doing to serve the Phoenix community in this, in this situation is something that's scalable. Like, these relationships are relationships to leverage in the future. Welcome Home in Mana House in Kingman, because that was the connection he made just from being there with us. So go ahead.
No, you said that best. Like, it is really, really incredible to see these relationships unfold so naturally. And yeah, Jerry and Linda were so critical to our success on the trip. And it was so generous of them to travel all that way just to be there, and also have this really incredible willingness to learn more about the experience of the scholars and the organizations we were working with. It really made the experience.
All right, well, let's leave Mana House and go to day 3 of service, which was the Phoenix Community Tool Bank.
Yes. So the Phoenix Community Tool Bank is an organization that lends out tools, events equipment, landscaping equipment, tables, chairs, you name it, so many things, to local nonprofits, local government, really any organization in the area that's doing good. It's pretty awesome because it's almost like a library, you could think of, where you can just borrow some of these items for a couple days, and they offer them at really low prices to make them very affordable to local organizations. So some of the work that scholars did there was, we called it like a 2024 facelift. Basically, going into 2024, it was a really busy season for them, and they had lots of orders coming up for events. So scholars were helping, clean up all of the chairs and some of the equipment and pack orders that will be going out that week. And also, like, for example, one of the things that they lend out a lot is giant Jenga for events. So the scholars were helping prep some giant Jenga pieces to be painted and ready for partner organizations to loan out. Something that's really incredible about the Phoenix Community Tool Bank is the Tool Bank organization is a national org with branches all over the nation. And so scholars were really excited to go back to their local branch, if they had one in their area, and continue volunteering. So, for example, we had a couple of scholars from Cincinnati, and there's a Cincinnati Tool Bank, and they were like, this is awesome. I can't wait to volunteer when I go home. And that's a big goal of the service trips, is to teach them lessons that they can bring back to their own communities. So I think that was a really huge takeaway from the week. And I also really loved the Phoenix Community Tool Bank because I think our organizations gave us a lot of different perspectives. So we served at like a smaller local organization, Mana House, which is a part of Catholic Charities, which is a much bigger organization, but that was like a local base. And then the Phoenix Community Tool Bank, which is national with locations all over the nation. So it was really cool for scholars to get that perspective and see that impact can happen in so many different ways.
So one of my favorite things about the curriculum for the service trips is the time allotted each night to reflect on the service, for the scholars to talk about and reflect and share anything that stands out from those reflections on the three service days.
Yeah, reflection is probably one of my most favorite parts of the trip too. It's always so amazing to see the scholars kind of process through what they did throughout the day. I think some things that are really notable from reflection are watching them uplift one another. I think is really incredible. Like, hey, I saw you did that. I saw you stepped up here and I really appreciated it. I think that really helps develop that sense of family that we're really trying to foster with our scholars. I think also making connections back to their own communities and think, oh, my community may be home to veterans in need as well. And that's something I want to get involved with because I've never done it before this trip. And I think just, watching them kind of like evolve throughout reflection, like they'll kind of start and they'll be like, this is what we did. And by the end, they're like, I've learned so much and I've grown and I can't wait to bring this back. Even when it comes to donations, they were like, sometimes when we give donations, we're just giving garbage. And they're like, I'm going to be, yes. And they're like, I want to be more intentional about how I support people who may be in need and donate my items and make sure they're getting things that I would like and that make me feel good about myself.
It's awesome. There's a lot of things I want to ask here, but I'm going to try to go in a logical order here. You were just talking about family and that we're trying to foster a sense of family among the scholars. We're trying to build a network. We want them to feel like they are part of a scholar network, but we also encourage scholars and try to make them feel like they are part of this broader Elks family. And let's shift. We've already talked a little bit about some of the Elks involvement. Let's shift and talk about some of the big way that we involve the Elks in this particular trip socially. And that's the night at Mesa-Buckhorn Lodge, right? Let's talk about that. Yeah. What happened there, what that was like, who came.
Absolutely. So we really always try to do a lodge visit on every service trip, and it's a really incredible part of the trip. We usually try to do it on the last evening. So we did that on this trip on the last evening, and it's always just the perfect cap to the week. And Mesa-Buckhorn truly blew our expectations out the water and hosted the most incredible night with Elks. So we arrived in the evening of the last night, and they treated the scholars like celebrities, announcing them and clapping, and the lodge was packed. The energy in the room was so tangible, and scholars said that they just immediately felt so much love. They were like, you could just feel all of the love and in the room. And so they treated us to an amazing dinner, and then had live music and dancing, which was most of the scholars' by far favorite part of the whole trip, was learning some line dances, dancing with the members. They were up on their feet almost the whole evening, getting to talk to members and chat with people. And it was a truly exceptional evening to see connections being formed between members and scholars, because some scholars maybe have never even been to a lodge before a service trip. And they come back saying, I know where I want to go next Friday night. I want to go hang out at my lodge, which is so amazing. And beyond that, Mesa-Buckhorn really went, above and beyond for the evening, because they had members from lodges all over the area and so many notable dignitaries that joined us for the evening that really made the scholars feel so welcome, and was, something that it was really special. Debbie, do you want to touch on that a little?
It's a big and active lodge, which is great. I had never been there, and it was wonderful to just show up and see. Even just when we arrived, right, the parking lot was full, like full. And then, like you said, we walked in, they had the tables reserved for us, long banquet tables, which was also really nice because you could talk to people, across from you, next to you. But it was also a situation that they were very intentional about making sure it was like scholars were interspersed with members. Like, they didn't want the scholars just all sitting together at one table. That would have been a really easy thing to do, and a thing that we've experienced, and it would have been fine, obviously, but it's so much more meaningful because of the fact that there were members that were there who were specifically tasked with engagement. Like, they were engaging our scholars because they wanted to learn more about them, why they were there, why they wanted to come, what they got out of the service, what they thought of being in and around Phoenix, which was wonderful. So obviously you had mentioned Jerry and Linda from Kingman. The state president, Albert Kyle, was there. I think he's from a Phoenix lodge. He was there with his wife, Brenda. We had the drug awareness program state chair there, Jack Ponzo, and his wife, Cheryl Ponzo, is the ENF state chair. So there's state leadership in that regard. You mentioned Debbie Melton. She gets all the major props, of course, for coordinating the whole thing, not just for the Welcome Home Kids Tamana House, but of course for the full dinner. Also, there was Dennis Bulk, he's the exalted ruler of the Mesa-Buckhorn Lodge, just doing his thing, making sure he was meeting and greeting everybody that was there. So I thought that was really great. And then we'll take a deeper dive into this, as Jim said, in a future episode. But a few of the grants coordinators that we met, both from the Gilbert Lodge and from the Casa Grande Valley Lodge, so Grover Ramsey from Casa Grande and Larry Morrison from Gilbert also showed up. We had met them days before, and they came to the dinner as well. So just a great vibe overall. Not just the dancing and the dinner, but also just the interest level was high. And I might have forgotten some people. I'm sorry if I did.
Well, Debbie, in your nearly 20 years with the Elks, which is a cute number, 20.
Cute.
You have darkened many a lodge doorway. And you had
I feel like I've brightened many a lodge doorway.
Many lodge doorway, but you had high praise for Mesa-Buckhorn.
I did. Yeah, I have been to lots of lodges. I have met lots of different people at the lodges, and I'll have to say, just the energy, the enthusiasm, and the interest that was demonstrated on that Friday night it was remarkable. It was gold standard, best practice. I wish we could replicate it everywhere we go.
That's awesome. So another thing we try to do, anything you want to add before I move on to the next question, Libby? No?
I think that Debbie really covered it. I think just the level of engagement was amazing. And the praises that the scholars spoke when they returned was just like, we feel so loved. We feel so connected to the Elks family. And they were like, you can really tell how much they care. Like, they cared about getting to know us. They care about our success. They care about supporting us in our college journeys. And I think that's a really amazing, like, enduring feeling that they left with.
I mean, it's right there in the organization's tagline.
Yeah. And I can't express enough gratitude to the Mesa-Buckhorn Elks for executing a perfect evening.
Yeah. So another thing we try to do on these service trips is opportunities for cultural enrichment. And you did something neat the morning of the second day before you went to Manor House. You want to talk about that?
Yes, sure. So we went to the Heard Museum of American Indian Art in the morning before we went to Mana House, which was a really cool experience. We got a guided tour. And I think that's a really cool opportunity because we really want, when we go on a service trip, for scholars to connect with the local area. What kinds of issues is this particular place facing? What are some, like, special things about it? And so I think learning more about Indigenous art is a really big part of Arizona. And so that was a great component of the trip.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And then there's some great pictures if our viewers go online to read. There are 2 stories about the trip, but there are also some great pictures. You went Friday to the Desert Botanical Gardens.
Yes, the Desert Botanical Gardens.
Way to see.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Great. All right, and lastly, let's talk a little bit about, one of the goals of these service trips is building that scholar network. And let's talk about the bonds these students forged, and just talk about that aspect of it, the team you were working with and how they meshed together, and any memorable moments.
Absolutely. This is probably my favorite part of my job, is watching them come into a trip as strangers and 24 hours later, they're best friends. I think it's just, I don't know what the secret sauce is, but I think that the ENF chooses some, and with the help of our lodge volunteers, of course, chooses some of the most incredible students. They're just so kind and thoughtful and inclusive. And so watching them become close to one another and form friendships is incredible. So we try to really do that in a couple of ways. So we start, like, the first day they arrive, we're doing team building, icebreakers, get to know you, so they can kind of quickly go from strangers to acquaintances maybe. During the service sites, of course, they're chatting with one another, really having to work together. And so that really helps foster some of those friendships. But I think one of the things that I love is, so for example, on the first day, we had some free time in downtown Tempe. So I was like, all right, go have fun and come back, in an hour for dinner. And they always want to hang out with each other. Like, they don't split up into, like, pairs or little groups. It wasn't, like, cliquey at all. The group was so cohesive, and they always want to hang out with each other. And I think that's so special. And then even in the evenings, it's like we would wrap up programming at like 10 p.m. They were like, can we please stay up and play games? Can we hang out a little bit longer? Because they just, love getting to know one another and watching them leave the trips as friends that will hopefully keep in touch with one another, is something that's so special. And I think something that was really important to me, because that's what made one of the components that made my trip so impactful and made me feel like, wow, I really feel so connected to this organization, was because I made some really amazing friends that I kept in touch with. So it was truly an honor to be kind of behind that.
mean, I said, one of the reasons we started down this journey of, offering the service trips was to forge this network, a sense of scholar community. And so it shouldn't be surprising, but it is. It's always a little surprising when these like organic meetups happen. They're veterans of the service trips or of other opportunities to get together with scholars, how they happen to be in the same town and they're meeting up, and others pile on that and they go out and get pictures back of these things happening that, we started it, but it's now like taken on a life.
Yeah. Yeah.
These relationships are taking on a life of their own.
Exactly. Yeah, it's really, really amazing to see. And I'm always, so grateful that I get to be a part of it. On the last day when we don't have any programming, they're like, oh, we're all going in and out together, and they'll spend as much time as possible before they have to leave with one another, which is really awesome.
I can't remember exactly off the top of my head how many of the participants on this trip actually had been on prior trips, maybe a half a dozen.
I think it was, 5.
Okay, 5. But when you get the energy around when it's time to like wrap up on, Friday night, Saturday morning, everybody is like, they want to know the next time, like they can go on another trip or come to convention, or it's always like, what can we do? What more can we do?
That is so true. Yeah. And we even have some that have applied for our next service trip right away. And then they're like, when's the summer trip happening? And I'm like, that's 5 months away. Give me a moment. And they're like, no, but when is it? So yeah, you can definitely see that they're really excited to stay involved or host meetups at their own universities. It's really, really cool.
Great segue.
Yeah, exactly. You guys got to my next question before I did. What's next?
Great question. So our next service trip will be our spring service trip to Philadelphia that will be taking place March 7th through the 11th. And planning for that is in full swing. We've got our 12 applicants, we're taking 12 students on this trip. So we sent out acceptances this week and are hearing back from scholars as they book their travel and get excited. And I'm already excited for the next one. I think Phoenix definitely set a really high bar that is going to be hard to reach. But I'm super excited about Philadelphia. We especially have a really strong scholar base along the East Coast. So I think it will be a really great opportunity to hopefully meet some new scholars and also welcome back some returners.
Well, it sounds like the Phoenix trip was an unqualified success, smashing good time, and I'm looking forward to hearing about the Philadelphia trip.
Thank you.
Debbie, anything else you want to have?
No. I know that the Philadelphia trip is going to be equally as meaningful and as said impactful for not only you, but for the scholars that participate, and can't wait to hear more about it.
Yep. And that trip is not going to plan itself, so we will turn you loose to get back to it.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks for joining us. All right, Libby.
Yeah. I have to say there's obviously so much. You can just tell we're over the moon with how wonderful the trip turned out. We didn't even mention one of the participants, her name's Merlin D'Souza, was basically a local. She was from Casa Grande Valley, which is one of the lodges that we went to visit. Merlin is a junior at Harvard. Maybe you've heard of it. And when Megan and Sam and I went down to visit the Impact Grant project manager, that's Grover Ramsey, we had mentioned, that Merlin was on this trip. And they were like, oh, we know. She's like a local celebrity, like, oh, we know Merlin. She's at Harvard. And one of the coalition members addressing people experiencing homelessness in that area had mentioned she knew Merlin. She knew her parents, like she knew everything about her. So, because when Grover greeted us, he greeted us in his full hoop shoot uniform. Like he had a hoop shoot t-shirt on. I was like, of course, like, oh, are you also the hoop shoot lodge director? And he's like, I am. He wears many hats for that lodge. So we suggested to him, we were talking about his contest, and I said, oh, well, Merlin doesn't go back to school for quite a while. Why don't you should see if she could volunteer? So they connected after the trip. And then the next weekend, Merlin volunteered as a rebounder for the Casa Grande Valley Lodge hoop shoot contest. So it was pretty exciting. But yeah, major props go out to the Arizona Elks Association and their support of this trip to Phoenix. So thank you.
Well, Debbie, we've kept our middies for a long time this episode.
Yeah, we did.
So let's just quickly, a couple things going on that we should probably touch on. Legacy deadline is when?
It is February 5th. So
scholarships available for competitive scholarships available for children and grandchildren of Elks. Get those applications in by February 5th.
Do it.
High school seniors.
High school seniors.
SIP, we're currently in the grace period. What do we call this
well,
period? The review period? Or?
It's the review period. So the deadline to submit applications was January 17th.
And so no period for that. That was the deadline. But now
that was the deadline. Now we're going through all those hundreds and hundreds of applications that came in.
Yeah.
Right around the 17th of January.
So
that takes a couple weeks.
Like the last minute.
That's right.
And that's where the grace comes in, is sometimes those applications don't quite meet the threshold of a grant we can approve, and then we can work with that lodge, and they have a certain amount of time that they can
that follow-up has to be done by the end of this month, which is the 31st. So that's happening. So we'll have some final numbers early in February to share. And then also let's get Sam and or Megan on to talk about the site visits, because they were really also incredibly special.
I would think that we'll have our next episode 85 will be out rather quickly at the beginning of February. And we'll talk about that. And then we'll probably do the traditional budget show either at the end of February or beginning of March.
Perfect.
That's the other thing going on, of course, is we're gearing up for our annual budget meeting, which is February 15th. And so we've been, neck deep in Excel workbooks for a while.
Yeah. I mean, you are an Excel whiz, and we go in and after you do your magic, plug some numbers in. So yeah, this is December through January is a very busy time for us, and it only gets busier. So yeah, I think that's a great idea. Let's have a quick early February episode followed by the budget episode.
All right, Debbie. Well, I think that ought to do it. I think that wraps up this show. If you've enjoyed it,
what should you do?
A thumbs up. If not, a thumbs down. Either way, share it far and wide so everybody can learn about what we're doing with Elks Scholar Service Trips. Those thumbs, those shares, even comments below, they're all free. Doesn't cost you anything. And it makes us feel really good. And we are your best friends. So why wouldn't you want us to feel really good? If you haven't yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, go ahead and do that right now. No reason not to. Again, it's free. And while you're subscribing, tap that bell so you'll be notified every time we post new content. The long promised, much anticipated Grittios are coming.
Yeah, they're coming.
From last season, and we'll be releasing those weekly in the run up to the national finals, and they are great. And
also the service trip video will be coming out soon too, right. So you can see that. You don't want to miss any of the incredible content.
A lot of good content coming down the pike in addition to our regular programming. So thanks again for tuning in. Until next time.
Bye.
Bye.